Hi everyone. A very, very brief summary of Amnesty International's latest report about serious crimes committed by Eritrean defense forces in Tigray. I said summary, but I think summary wouldn't be the right word, because I'm not going to attempt to give you a summary, not least because it's a rigorous report. I think it's about 46 pages, and if I were to attempt to give you a summary, inevitably I would omit very important details, and that wouldn't be fair to the stories that Amnesty has covered, and to also to the victims covered in the story. Some of the stories in the report are so horrific, stories of rape and stories of gang rape as well. So I'm not going to try to summarize the report. I think what I would say is I'm sure that most of you will have seen the report, if not read it. But as always, my recommendation when there is a serious report into serious crimes in Tigray is try to make time to read the report, because if whether that is Amnesty or Human Rights Watch or other bodies have made the effort to write a rigorous report, I think the least that we could do is make time for reading the report out of respect to the people producing these reports, because it's very, very difficult to produce reports on into crimes by whether that is Ethiopian or Eritrean troops in Tigray, because the access is extremely difficult, and they go to great lengths to collect data and information and compile these reports. I know the amount of work that goes into these sorts of reports. So I think out of respect to the people, and also to the people, to the Tigrayan victims who shared their stories, in the hope that as many people as possible would read their stories. So please make sure that you make time out for the report and read it. But now, what I'm going to do, essentially, I'm just trying to bring it to your attention, really, and that is pretty much it. But while I'm at it, I'm just going to highlight some aspects of the report to sort of give you a picture, an idea of what is contained in the report. And so, broadly speaking, the report is about Amnesty International's findings of this investigation between 13, so that is 1-3, of May to 15th of July 2023. And at an abstract level, the findings are that Eritrean troops have committed war crimes and possibly crimes against humanity. I think that the Amnesty is very careful in how they couch their language, because they didn't want to say crimes against humanity, but that is more for technical reasons, and not because there is no evidence, but that is what the crimes amount to, but out of sort of care for detail and technicality. And the crimes that they report rape, sexual slavery, extrajudicial executions, and pillage of property, and they recount a lot of stories that fall into one or more of these categories. And the report concerns two districts, or you could say two tabias. I think that would be more proper in Tigray, Kohos Bah and Mariam Shawito. So those of you who don't know these places, Kohos Bah is somewhere between Adigrat, on the way from Adigrat to Asmara, so not far from the Eritrean Tigrayan border. and the other Mariam Shawito is around Adwa, not far from Adwa. And actually, there was another report into the crimes reported here in Mariam Shawito. I'm not sure if it was by Amnesty or by Human Rights Watch or by one of these media outlets. I can't be sure, but I do remember that the crimes that relate to Mariam Shawito that have been reported here had been reported elsewhere. So some of the details might vary, but broadly sort of the same. You get the same picture. What happened? I'm going to come back to that later. But generally, what happened is that Eritrean forces from around October 25 to the 1st of November, right until the day before Tigray government or the TPLF and the Ethiopian regime signed the cessation of hostilities agreement in Pretoria. Until that day, they went on killing spree in Mariam Shawito, because they knew that they had a very small window of opportunity to unleash horror, and that's exactly what they did. And as soon as they knew that trouble might be coming their way following the agreement, they fled to Eritrea. And that is essentially the context. That is essentially what happened in Mariam Shawito. Violations happened between 25th of October to, so now I'm reading from my note. Various kinds of violations occurred between 25 October to 1 November. So that is in terms of Mariam Shawito. And Kahol Sabah is slightly different because whereas in Mariam Shawito most of the crimes are killings, in Kahol Sabah, yes, there are killings, extrajudicial killings, as they call them technically. But most of the crimes are sexual violence. So rape, gang rape, they make a distinction between rape and gang rape, and sexual slavery as well. Sexual slavery that involves rape, of course. But there are some technical sort of nuances in these terms. So please go read the report to see the technical, why they make distinction between rape and gang rape and sexual slavery and stuff like that. And also, war crimes and crimes against humanity. Broadly, war crimes are serious crimes that happen during war, whereas crimes against humanity are also serious crimes, but it's not necessarily the case that there has to be war. That it could be in the absence of war as well. And in fact, that is what seems to have happened in Kahol Sabah, because the Eritrean forces went on raping and gang raping and killing people after the Tigray government and the Ethiopian regime had agreed cessation of hostilities. So technically war had stopped, but the crimes by Eritrean forces hadn't stopped. And so I think that's a sort of broad picture in terms of what happened. I'm going to give you some highlights into the crimes, so you see what it is that Eritrean forces have done. The one thing that I think the one conclusion that is unavoidable is most of the crimes that they have committed are so heinous. They are so brutal. The crimes that the Eritrean Defense Forces have unleashed on Tigrayans, and especially on Tigrayan women. So the methodology, or I think that's a mistaken word actually, the method, I would say, that Amnesty International used, of course, the usual suspect is remote interview, because they couldn't get any access. They couldn't go to Tigray because the Ethiopian regime has blocked human rights defenders or journalists or any other bodies from traveling to Tigray. So the only recourse they have is remote interviews, and that's what they have done here as well. So they have interviewed 49 people. So the whole report is based on interviewing 49 people. So some highlights. From November 1 to January 19, which is the sort of the scope of the investigation in Kahol Sabah, about 160 cases of sexual violence were reported. So this is according to a medical expert that Amnesty had spoken to. They told them that in those, I think about 3 months, 160 cases of sexual violence were reported, and they invariably, the victims said that they were the perpetrators were Eritreans, and they said that they identified them by their dialect, by their uniforms, and by the type of question that they were asking. So, for instance, one of the questions that the Eritrean forces were asking their victims were you not saying that Tigray would prevail? So if Tigray has prevailed, why is it that we are raping you? Very, very cruel questions, of course. And another medical expert said that totally from eastern Tigray, so from the part of Tigray around Adigrat, a total of 2,250 cases of sexual violence have been reported. So that is from November 2020 until Amnesty produced this report. I think until with the exact date, I must have it in my note. Until 15 July 2023, a total of 2,250 cases of sexual violence. These are the ones that have been reported, and anybody who knows Tigrayan society would know that most women wouldn't have felt comfortable to report, and so the vast majority of cases of sexual violence wouldn't have been reported. I think that's always something that we should point out. And I thought I would just I would highlight two stories that really capture the essence of the nature of the crimes in terms of the rape. One is the story of Fanta. Of course, they use anonymous names. So Fanta, Amnesty said that Fanta and her husband had been divorced, and she was raising 3 children on her own. And the Eritrean forces. So this is a story that happened in Kahol Sabah. So Eritrean forces came to her house, and they asked her where her husband was, and she told them that they had divorced, but they didn't believe her. They said that her husband must have joined Tigray Defense Forces. So that is the particular source of anger, really. And reading the report, you sense that the most vulnerable people in Tigray were women who had been widowed, who had divorced, because Eritrean forces invariably thought that the reason that the husband wasn't around was because he had joined the TDF, and they were exacting some sort of revenge on the woman whom they thought had sent her husband. So that is one of the dynamic that you sense reading between the lines. Most of the victims are single women. But anyway, in the case of Fanta, so they took her to a camp that they had set up in Kahol Sabah, and she stayed there for 3 months as a sexual slave. And the other stories of Bezaut also, I'm not sure about her marital status, but they took her to a camp, and I think she found a way to escape from the camp, but they found her, they caught her, and it's horrific. So they put her under some sort of house arrest, and they took turns to rape her on various on different days. So they would come and rape her, and they would go, but they made sure, I don't know how. Maybe I forgot that aspect of the detail, but they found ways to make sure that they made her under house arrest. So they didn't take her back to the camp, but she stayed at her house, but she couldn't move. She was a sexual slave, and I think it's a similar story of Wubit as well. She was raising children on her own. They came and they asked her the same question. They told her why she sent her husband to join the TDF, and as a punishment, they took her to the camp and continued raping her as a sexual slave as well, and a number of other similar stories. I'm just highlighting some of the to just give you sort of an idea of why they were raping her and what the excuse that they used, the Eritrean forces. Otherwise, I think that should be that, because otherwise I would appear as though I was trying to summarize it, and I'm not. But so that I don't know if you could see, but the focus is Mariam Shawito. So Mariam Shawito is sort of, they say Aksum, because Aksum is a more recognizable city, but it's nearer to Adwa. And the other is Kahotsbah, on the way from Adigrat. So Adigrat is here, and this is the road that takes from Adigrat to Asmara. And so the scope of these reports is crimes committed by Eritrean forces in Mariam Shawito between 25th of October to the 1st of November, right to one day before the signing of the agreement in South Africa. And this went on from 1st of November to 19th of January. When everybody was celebrating that Ethiopia and Tigray had signed a peace agreement, and that the guns had been silenced, as the stupid people at the African Union would say, and that there was nothing happening in Tigray. But of course, a serious thing was happening at least in Kahotsbah. And of course, these are the areas that Amnesty International, for one reason or another, focus. But if there was investigation in Western Tigray or Southern Tigray, there would be even more disturbing and more horrific findings. So I'm just scrolling down to make sure that I sort of gave you the main highlights, because otherwise it's a meticulous and rigorous report. It kind of recounts story of rape and pillage and all right. So this is Kahotsbah, and of course I said that Amnesty mainly relied on interviews, but of course they corroborated everything using satellite imagery, as they always do. So this is one satellite imagery that they are showing. So they're just trying to triangulate everything here. So you could see everything, armored vehicles. I mean, all the data that they use to ascertain the thing that some of the interviews said. And some very disturbing stories recounted here. Please go read the report. I'm going to put a link to the report, and Amnesty makes the usual recommendations. Of course, they say that Amnesty say that efforts by the Ethiopian government to issue some sort of justice for victims are not enough, and so far the Ethiopian government has made some noise that they have tried to they have tried to bring perpetrators to account, but Amnesty said that that's just a lie, and at any rate, everything the Ethiopian government does is not transparent, so we wouldn't know what was true and what wasn't true. And at any rate, the Ethiopian government is one of the implicated parties, so it wouldn't be trusted to be an impartial dispenser of justice. All in all, one of the strong recommendations, but Amnesty makes it the recommendation that everybody has been making, which is that the UN should extend the mandate of the ICHRRE, I think the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia, or something like that. And so one of the pleas that I would make to you is go and push for the mandate to be extended. I think if you watched the interview I did 2 days ago with Eden, you will find all the ways that you could advocate for the mandate to be extended. So try to do that. Otherwise, I think I'm going to leave that at that. As I said, it's a long report, and try to make time for reading it. So I think I'm saying this for the fifth time because I think it's important. And so that will be that. Thank you for listening to me, and bye bye.